What's going on, guys? This is Rizzi here. I'm one half of Immortals. I just wanted to point out real quick before I start the tutorial, the track that you just heard before I started talking was our new release, Cataclysm. It's a collab with Whiskers, and it's coming out as a free release on Play Me Records next week on Thursday. I believe that's September the 17th. So yeah, definitely go check that out. Alright, let's get into this. So this is a very basic startup session that I just made real quick. So you guys can just get the gist of how we do the routing in our mixdowns. The next part, we're gonna do part 2, I think maybe 3, depends on how much we get through the next one, on mixdowns. So this is just to show you guys the routing of it, the basics. Alright, so first off, I'm gonna just let you know that the kick, snare, and sub, we're gonna turn these off, and I'm gonna explain why I'm not using them right now. I'm gonna explain what we're gonna do with them after I go through this whole routing process. So here are some very normal elements you'd see in most tracks. Some tom fills here, some percussive elements, a couple different bass patches, some keys, any melodics that you'd have in the track, some stabs, vocal samples, and a bunch of like risers, effects, and stuff like that. Just very, a very bland startup track here so far. So the thing that really, that's really important in our mixdowns are these things called pre-master buses. And these are basically channels that you're gonna route signal through to go out to your master, and they're gonna be channels that you can affect and process a bunch of elements that sound similar to each other before they go out to your master channel. So we're gonna start our first one, start an audio track. We're gonna call it drums pre-master. Now I'm gonna take any drum percussive sounding elements in the track and route them all directly through this pre-master track. So I'm going to go to my drums and my fills, because again I'm leaving the kick and snare and stuff out for later, which I'll explain why. I'm going to take the output. This is the input of the track, this is the output of the track. I'm taking the output of both of these and sending them directly to that drums pre-master I just created. So you see the output now for both of them, because I highlighted both, goes to the drums pre-master bus. You have to stay very color coordinated and labeled with me, or else I start to freak out. So these are now both being routed directly to the drums pre-master bus, and I'm going to put the routing on in. So that means signal is passing straight through it and coming right out with non-stop. It's not like signal ends and then the signal path ends. It's just constantly a direct feed right from wherever it's coming from, which says excuse me, external in. So it's bringing the signal in from these that are routed to it, and then going out of the master. It's just passing directly through this track. So that's it for these drums right here. Now I'm going to make another one called my bass pre-master. I'm going to take all these basses right here and do the same thing. I'm going to put the output of all 3 of them to the bass pre-master. So that is it for these 2, and you see those are all 3 going directly to the input of this. And again, I'm going to turn it on in, so it's passing straight through. I'm going to make another channel called the keys pre-master. This is going to be all of my melodic elements and the vocal samples. I just feel like they work, they're easily processed together around the same way. If you can set up these pre-masters however you'd like, I just feel like this works the best way for us, since these elements are usually processed all the same, like all the drums in here, all the bass elements together, they're gonna have some of the same distortion or stuff like that added to them. The key, all the melodic elements and the vocals and stuff usually sit around the same areas. In the mix is even just EQing wise, anything that you're going to do affecting them, usually for us it sits around with the same processing. So same concept, all of these are going to change the output to the keys pre-master, set that to in, and then the last one is going to be our effects pre-master, and this is going to have all of our obviously effects and risers and stuff like that all sent to it. Alright, so we've got all of our elements here. All of these is a track in, so all of these are going to our pre-masters. Alright, so we've got all the pre-masters set up, except for the kick, snare, and sub. Now, the next thing that we do is we're going to group, and again, these don't have to work just for single tracks. Going to these pre-masters, you can group, like let's say you want to group these together and call these percussion, and then you have like even multiple other groups, which is what we do for our basses, since we have like sometimes like 60 bass patches in one track. We'll make a whole bunch of groups of similar bass sounding groups, and then we'll send all of those into the bass masters, bass pre-master, excuse me. So there'll be like 15 different bass groups with a whole bunch of sounds in them, all going to one pre-master. And one of the best things about doing this process is you're eliminating your fader amounts to these. You want to condense the amount of faders you have to get a better mix of your track. So for instance, here we have 1 through 15. These are 15 elements in the track that we just brought down to now 4 faders. So, we're huge advocates of referencing our tracks on different, as many sound systems as we can to get the best medium of them all that we can achieve for our best mix down. Because obviously, songs are going to be played on other systems than just yours and what you're producing with. So we want to find the best mix for the car, for club style speakers, for just your laptop coming out of the really shitty laptop speakers that you have in ears, like the earbuds that you have. Reference your tracks on a bunch of different sound systems so that you can find what best suits all of them. Get a little bit of what's better in your earbuds, get a little bit of what's lacking in the car system, get a little, don't go too drastic with your mix on any certain type of sound system, because every speaker is going to react to the spectrum differently. So yeah, just keep that in mind. So yeah, you can, with these pre-masters, if the mix between all 4 of these effects aren't perfect, which, they're not going to be just by setting up this pre-master, you can, by having them separated still and not just printing out a whole stem of all these together in a group, you can still gauge and process everything on this group right here as a whole group. But if you still need to, affect something a certain way or get the level different or whatever on these individual elements, you still have them here to do so. You're just sending the signal directly through here so that you can process it now on this channel. So it's a huge help as far as the the amount of faders that you have, any processing you want to do as a whole group. Like for instance, this pre-master for the bass, you want to put some distortion on all of your bass sounds. You don't want to go putting them on each single one when they're all going to have more or less the same effect onto it. You can just put it right on this pre-master and it'll affect all of them at once. It saves you time, so your workflow is much quicker. And it's just less of a hassle. It'll eat up less of your CPU. There's just major, a whole bunch of benefits that are going to come from doing this method. And again, this is no right or wrong way. You're totally free to do it however you'd like. We just found that this is the best and most effective way for us to go about our mixdowns. So yeah, this is pretty straightforward as far as this routing now. The next step that we do take are grouping all of these 4 pre-masters that we have all together as our mixdown. And again, that's reducing the amount of faders that you have. We went from 15 to 4 to now 1 before going to our master, which is just our mixdown bus. So now we can go in and process our whole track basically on how we were going to do it anyway, being on our master channel, but this is still giving us a little bit more of control. So we can still do all the limiting and compressing and everything you would do for your whole song on your mixdown that you would do on your master on this channel, but you can still go in and do some multi-band compression on all your drums right here if you wanted to, versus trying to do multi-band compression on the whole track. Because if you do it on the whole track, you can't separate the compression you're doing from your to your drums. You can't separate how you're compressing your drums to how you're compressing your bass to how you're compressing the vocals. You can't do separate compression on each of those if you're doing it on your master channel, because they're all routed into the same bus. So this gives you way more clarity, way more control over everything. It's just a huge, headache reliever. So So yeah, that's pretty much it for the routing for most of the elements of the track. From fills all the way down to effects are grouping into these pre-master buses by similarity, and then they're going into a much bigger group of the mixdown where you're really gonna do like your pre-mastering stuff, getting your final stages of your mixdown done in here. Now, where we left out the kick, snare, and sub. Turn these back on since now they're relevant again. Basically, I'm keeping them separate because I want them to bypass this whole routing chain right here. I want my kick and snare and my sub to go directly to my master channel, so I'm leaving the output of these all in master while all the rest of these have their output going to their pre-masters. A couple different reasons. Main reason being for the kick and snare that I want them to be as punchy as possible and not get thrown into all this effect that all this processing that's going on here, mostly limiting and compressing and stuff. I don't want them to go through all that. I want them to be separated and be extremely punchy and control the whole mix. I want them to be up front and set, the groove for everything, which playing off of the groove, one of the other main reasons is side chaining. I want my kick and snare to be able to side chain my whole track. Again, that's just our preference. You don't have to have it do that. You can still even just have the kick or the snare or even both. You can group them together and just have the side chaining coming from the group of these kick and snare. You can have those going directly to each one of these pre-masters if you want. So let's say you don't want your kick and snare to sidechain any of the effects and risers and stuff, but you still want it to sidechain the basses. You can you can sidechain compress just your bass pre-master from your kick and snare. So you can still push down those bass sounds out of the way of your kick and snare without it affecting the rest of your mix, and you can affect all of those basses by just putting it on your bass pre-master. It is a huge difference in trying to do sidechain compression on each individual. I mean, again, you can still do it on each individual one, but this saves time if you're doing just general sidechain compression that you just wanted to push out of the way of your kick and snare so that your kick and snare sound up front and have their hard, heavy hitting drums. The other reason why these are out of this whole routing chain is because of the low frequencies. The kick is, mostly from the kick and the sub. When you put them through all this rigorous processing that goes on in here, where you're trying to get your whole track loud, the low end from those elements tend to distort really quickly because of heavy limiting and compressing and all that stuff. So I'm keeping it separate and just sending it to the master so that I'm just going to do a tiny bit of processing on my master now, before I export everything and send it out to actually be mastered, which we do our own mastering and we put it into a separate project. So my kick and my sub are bypassing all of this, going directly to the master channel, so they're not going through this heavy processing and not getting distorted. I can do just what tiny bit of compression and stuff I was going to do to them, which is going to go on the whole track anyway, by just doing it on the master and only having these being routed to the master channel. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the whole routing chain. We're going to go more in depth into one of our own sessions for the next part of the tutorial. So yeah, I hope this helped, guys. You can add us all on social media. We're at Immortals Audio on all of our social medias. We love getting feedback from you guys, and if you have any questions at all on the tutorial, make sure you comment on the YouTube page there, and we'll get to it as quick as we can. All right, thanks, guys. Till next.